Okay, here we are again. Today's December 8th, 2009, and I asked a few questions. Dad remembered memory from his grandma that he wants to share.
Well, both grandmas, let's say. One story from each one. Okay. Okay?
Go for it.
Well, I was just a little kid when my grandmother, Tew, died. She died in 32, pardon me, in 33, pardon me, in 36. Grandpa died in 33. Grandma died in 36. I was born in 28, so I will only be 8 years old. And she never told me, things that were highly meaningful to her as much as she did older grandchildren. So some of the older grandchildren remember this story, and so I'll tell the story. It's a true story as far as I know, and I believe it to be true. But Grandma never told it to me personally, but he did to the older, like Merlene and Helen, like that, the older grandchildren. But the story is that there was a bum, a hobo that came up into Mapleton and stopped in at Grandma and Grandpa Tew's place. And there weren't many that did that, because most of the bums and hobos would go into Springville and ride the rails, on the trains coming and going. But Mapleton was several miles off the track. But anyway, the story is that he came up there and knocked at the door, and it had been snowing. Well, it was snowing, actually. And Grandma answered the door, and he said that he was a man that was in need of food, because he was really hungry, and he didn't have any job or anything, and so didn't have anything. So Grandma said, well, come on in. We don't have a lot of things, but we got enough to help you. And so he came in, and she cooked up a nice meal for him, and he ate the meal. And I never did hear that he said anything very profound himself. I'm not sure, but anyway, when she got through, he thanked her very much, and she said, "Well, wait a minute, I'll give you some sandwiches and that kind of thing you can take on with you." And so she put things together and got him a nice big bag of food to take with, and then he went out the door, and she got thinking. She said, well, I should have told him which way to go, because if he went to the east, he might go up the canyon and get lost and die of exposure. She says, I'm going to go find which way he went by which way his tracks were, in the snow, because it was snowing. And she opened the door, and there were no tracks. And she said, well, that can't be. It was every reason why there should be tracks. She went over to where he came in, and there weren't any tracks there either. And so she just figured it was kind of an unsolved mystery as to why it is that there weren't any tracks going either east or west. And she
Perhaps an angel, huh?
thought some, and Merlene and Helen and Naomi, I thought, well, there's a possibility of the three Nephites, one of the three Nephites there or something. So I don't know.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Dad, I remember this story. I don't know quite which one, but the one that heard, "Oh, my father."
Oh, that was Grandma Lundell. Grandma Lundell in Sweden. That was one of the main things that.
So that was Leah's mother?
Yeah.
Okay.
Carolina.
Okay.
Was her name. Carolina.
So tell that story.
Carolina Steelquist Lundell. But Carolina was meeting with the elders there in Sweden, and when she heard this song, "Oh My Father," and concerning pre-existence and that way, it hit her very powerfully that she definitely believed in that.
So I guess I heard wrong. I thought that she was going someplace when she heard that song being sung, and she stopped and listened to it.
No, I don't think so.
So you thought she was already having the discussions with the missionaries?
I think so.
And the song just helped solidify her own internal belief.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It was one of the things that helped convert Grandma.
Now, did you say that she was the
Lundell.
same one that had to live a winter with like potato peels and eating hardly anything? Was that Carolina?
That's her, yeah. Yeah, she her dad died. He was a drunk, and he died of alcoholism. And her mother was left a widow, and they didn't have a good welfare system over there in northern Sweden. And they were in unbelievable poverty. The kids couldn't help themselves because they had nothing to put in their tummy, and they'd go out and dig up potato peelings. They couldn't even plant the wedges of potatoes, all they had to do was try to plant the peelings and hope that they would grow into potatoes, and it was hard to have anything grow because of the short season, up in Sweden there, like, golly, it would have between the time of the summer come and the first frost and the last frost, why, there was not hardly enough time to have most things couldn't grow because they didn't have enough light and heat and time. Yeah,
So this was prior to her finding out about the church?
Yeah.
And then she had further real trials and challenges when she joined the church.
Yeah, when she was born, why, her mother had twins, and she wasn't expecting twins, and she had just a burlap bag, to put on the one child, and here she had twins and nothing to put on the kid. And so she figured, well, I'll pick the one that looks like it might be most likely to live, and probably the other one will die because I can't give it anything much in the way to cover. So she put some straw. She did have a little straw, and she covered the kid, the newborn, with.
And that's Carolina.
Yeah. That was Carolina that she covered with the straw. It didn't have a burlap bag. And they kind of expected her to die before the light of day, but she refused to do that. And she was still alive. So anyway, all the kids didn't have anything to eat. at all.
So growing up, she was in abject poverty growing up.
Starving to death, really.
And then she married.
Oh yeah, she was Cinderella kind of thing. She went to work for the Lundell family that had a creamery, you know, a dairy and a creamery. And my golly, she worked really hard, and she was a beautiful woman, and she was amazingly intelligent. She had kind of a computer-like mind. She'd be able to nip out additions and multiplications, you know, by her mind, almost as fast as a computer would.
So she caught the interest of one of the Lundell boys.
Huh?
So she caught the interest of one of the Lundells.
Yeah, she did, when she was working in the creamery there. And so Johann Frederick Lundell, the son of the proprietor of the creamery, fell in love and married her. And so here she is, kind of like a Cinderella. She much different between her total poverty, because she used to beg from beggars and eat the bark off of trees.
So here she marries John, and she has money at last.
Yeah, that's right.
And then she has 2 children.
Then, yeah, I think it was after that the missionaries came and she got converted. And then
What about her husband, John? Was he converted too?
Yeah, he was converted too. Yeah.
And how did the Lundell family feel about that?
They weren't really tickled about it.
And was that when she and John began planning to come to America?
Uh-huh. But they went back to see Carolina's mother, and like I say, her name was Hannah Nilsson, and she was the one that was in such poverty. But in spite of that, why, when she told her about marrying into wealth, you know, in the Lundells, why, she was happy about that. But when she managed to tell them about the Mormons that she joined the church, you know, she said, "Never let your shadow cross my door. I'd rather see you in hell than a Mormon." Oh, man.
Boy, that would have been hard. Did they go across the ocean did they go take a ship to America?
Yeah.
With their 2 children.
And they went into the little town of Benjamin, down below Spanish Fork, and a lot of other Swedish people were there in Benjamin. It was kind of a Swedish town, at least in the early part of it. And
How many children did they end up having?
well, they had a son, Leo, and he died. And I guess that's how my mother got her name, because they figured Leo was a lot like Leo, and so they gave her the name of Leah. But she was the youngest one. The older boys were Carl and Francis, and Esther, and Martha.
Okay.
And Leah, that's it, except for Leo. So that makes 6, but one died.
Okay. Was there any other stories from grandparents that you wanted to share before we move to the next question?
Well, just how much I always loved my grandmother Lundell, and Dad did too. Dad says, "That woman I love like my mother," and he says, And so when she made her will, you know, as to who would administer the estate, why, even though she had the two older boys, Carl and France, she made Martha and my dad the administrators of the estate.
Oh, wow.
That's how much she thought of Dad and of course of Martha, and how little she thought of. In fact, Carl, he boasted. He said, "I'll break that will."
No.
But he never did. And
Huh.
So, but my dad and his mother-in-law had a mutual.
Love and admiration for each other.
That's right. They sure did.
Okay, well let's go to the next subject, which is growing up. And the first question is, what were the 2 or 3 things that you loved doing as a child?
Oh, marbles. Man.
Marbles.
I was crazy for what we called MIGs, which is really playing marbles. I was nuts on that. I would play all the day that I had available to me, which wasn't too much because I had to do so many chores and help on the farm. But even so, what little time I had, I wanted to play marbles.
Marbles, okay.
And I'd get to the point where I'd put maybe 6 marbles in, and the guy I was playing would only put in 1. And
You'd still win him.
And I'd still win him in spite of that. Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, besides marbles, what's another couple of things that... I don't think horseback riding was your favorite thing, from what I remember.
No. Marbles certainly was. And, fishing. Fred and I would go when Dad would give us a chance. Why, we would ride over what they call the tables over to Maple Canyon, that's where we go every year.
Uh-huh.
And at that time, why, it was an open ditch, you know, instead of an open creek, rather than having cement, lining or all of that. And we never had any of that when I was a kid. We'd go up there and they weren't big fish, they were small fish, but we'd catch a fair number of them. Usually catch, between Fred and I, we'd get maybe 15 fish or something.
So you enjoyed fishing with Fred. And your dad, of course, he was Mr. Fisherman. I remember that about Grandpa.
Dad loved to fish. And we did, what chance we had to do it.
Okay, is there anything else that you can remember that you really enjoyed doing as a child?
Well, just reading, you know.
Okay. All right. Okay. So now name for us one of your funnest memories as a child. I remember one memory that you had when you were climbing a silo. I don't know if you figured that was fun, but your mom didn't think it was fun.
When I what?
When you climbed the silo as a child,
yeah.
And your mom about had a coronary.
Yeah, I could easily have been killed on that deal.
I'm not sure if you would consider that to be lots of fun.
I was age 4, and I was on the top of the silo, and Mama, look at me, Mom. Wow. And,
right.
you know, it's kind of sure death either direction. The silo wasn't full of silage at all. It was empty, and of course on the outside it was empty, and then the silo was taller than a barn, you know, and my golly, my mother didn't know what to do. There wasn't any other adults around, and she darn well couldn't climb up the silo.
So there's one of the experiences of your life.
She said the only logical thing to say, she said, you get right down off in that this minute, and you be careful coming down. And so she went, there's windows on the silo that go up and kind of,
So she prayed all the way down.
oh yeah, and she was down there so that if I did fall, I could fall on her, and maybe save my life some. And so by the time I finally got down, and here she is with this desire to warm my bottom side and thank the Lord at the same time.
I bet.
She did both. Yeah.
Well, what about the chores when you were young? What were your general chores, say, in up through elementary school? What would you expect to have to do each day?
Well, we had to chop wood and bring wood in for the stove and take the clinkers out, and the ashes out and outside and bring in the new stuff. We had to get kindling, and we had to get which is the fine things for building a fire, and then we'd get the larger pieces of wood, and we had plenty of wood, but they'd have to be chopped and
right.
so on.
That'd be a lot of work.
Oh yeah, and
what about did you have to gather eggs, milk cows?
Yeah, we had cows that we had to milk. Yeah.
Did you help Grandpa with the farm? I mean, with his vegetable garden?
And I had to help feed the cows and hay, and feed the. And then the other thing, we would have some pea vines down at the pea viner, and we'd have to either take horses down or later on take down the tractor, and we'd get a load of pea vines, we called them, and we'd bring them back, and the cows that go wild over those, man, they loved the pea vines. Probably it was because they got partly way drunk, because they were in silage, and that meant that bacteria had been working on them and all,
So
it was like candy to
the cows.
To the cows and horses.
But I mean, obviously, you as a family, you ate some of those peas too. I mean, the good ones, didn't you?
Well, I'm talking about in the wintertime when we would go get the
what was left over?
Pea vines and take them up there and mix them with straw and feed them to the
cows.
Yeah, to the cows and horses.
All right.
That had to be done along with putting out hay and
right
and milking the cows and.
Sounds like it makes for a full day.
And also all the things about the fire, about the building fires.
Right.
Because that's what we had to heat our house was heaterola, they called it.
And as we all know, my dad makes very good fires to this day. He's well known for his fire-making abilities. Let's go back to I know you're getting really tired, Dad, and we just have a couple minutes more. And the other question was, who did you hang around with, and who did you goof around with and have fun with in those earlier days before your mission?
I had somewhat of a friend in Cornell Binks. He and I would get together, and a lot of times we'd go down to his place, and his mother would help us so that we make this divinity candy, and that was very, very good. So we enjoyed it.
Oh, yum.
And So he was kind of a friend, but kind of, well, of course, the one that was the really friend to me was Bob Holly. That's the one that I spent so much time with.
And one that you still know today.
The other friend that I had some was my cousin. He was my same age. His name was Clyde Tew. He was Uncle Brian, my Uncle Brian's son, and he unfortunately got himself onto a horse, and the horse bucked him off onto the narrow-tired rake and busted the bones in his rib bones, and then he internally bled to death and died.
Oh, how old was he?
Probably 17 or so.
And how old were you?
The same. We were the same age.
Wow. Oh, how sad. What did you most dislike as a child? I mean, if you were to say the one thing it was really hard for me, and I just really didn't like it.
I'll tell you what it was. I had got up from a measles, I guess it was, and
You weren't a child then.
well, I was.
It was before his mission.
Oh yeah, a long time before my mission. And I was, they were building a new church, you know, and we were meeting in a schoolhouse.
Oh, yeah.
For the church meetings. And all at once I found myself down fighting people's legs. I found myself, in other words, I had fainted as a result of getting up like that. And I don't know why it brought so much fear into my heart, but I was just afraid of fainting all the time, especially if I was up in front of crowds or doing anything like that. I'd just go into a state of panic. And that was the bad thing and it stayed with me even to the time of going on my mission. Every time when I'd give a talk in church, the benches would all shake from me, you know, shaking.
And for those of you who are viewing this, you all know that Dad overcame that in quite a major way. He's been a speaker, and
the major thing that the mission did for me was, and especially on street meetings over in England, and I got over that.
That's really
all
something.
All the time growing up, it was the worst thing. Yeah, it was a real bad thing.
So those of you watching can know that if you have something that's really a big challenge and a fear, that, you know, remember Grandpa and what he's done. Well, we're going to take off and go eat now, so we'll say goodbye for now, and we'll visit a little later.
All right, sounds good.